Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, also the host of We Need to Talk on every Sunday at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions stated herein are mine and mine alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other damn therapist for that matter. Boom! Shakalaka done. I would like to thank my sponsor, BetterHelp.com. BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. They are my sponsor. They are an online counseling service. They hook you up with online counselors. So in your state that are master's level or PhD level, if you are outside the United States, they can hook you up with an American counselor for those states that do allow the counselors to do that. So they're just awesome. If you're in a small town, you can't get to another counselor, or you don't like the counselor in your town, you can hook up with BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. The nice thing of it is you can do it from anywhere. You can do it as long as you have internet connection. So if you need to, you can go out to your car, or you can go, wherever you can get some privacy and have a session, which is pretty cool. Also, they're very affordable, which I really love. So for a package of 4, I think it works out to like $65 per session, which is immensely affordable. So thank you, BetterHelp, BetterHelp, all one word, .com/Chris Godinez, and I will put that down in the description. Okay, so what are the questions for this week? Okay, hang on. Let me grab my reading glasses so I can see this. I was isolated for most of my life by a narcissistic mother, moved far away a long time ago, but still mostly on my own. How can I make real connections to people, as I never truly learned how to do this? So you are having to play catch up, basically. And you know what? I've seen abusive parents do that. Move their kids, move their kids, move their kids, move their kids. Isolate them so that they don't know how to make a connection. And I suspect that the narcissistic parents are doing this in order to make the kid completely reliant upon the parent for all social connection and things like that. So how do you learn how to socialize? How do you learn how to, step out of that isolation and step into having your own life? Get with a good trauma therapist. That would be immensely helpful. A good one, a good trauma therapist who understands narcissistic abuse, who understands isolation, who understands how much the parent shoves their fear into our heads, and then it makes it very difficult for us to go socialize and to meet new people and to get new friends and things like that. So the other thing to do, honestly, would be work on self-esteem. The Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi, or You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. Work on boundaries, start discovering who you are, and also start doing things that you like. What did you always want to do that your parents were always like, no, 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 don't you dare? So for example, when I was 21, I decided I was going to backpack across Europe. And of course, the last thing my mom said to me was, don't you dare go to a communist country. So what was the first thing I did? I went to East Berlin, East Germany. So, it was like, no, I'm going to go explore. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to, I need to go find things out for myself, and that's kind of what we need to do. And it's going against every single basic assumption that's ever been shoved into our space. So this is why working with a trauma therapist is really good, so that when you do start confronting those basic assumptions and those mistaken thoughts and those mistaken beliefs, you are able to confront them from an adult standpoint as opposed to an inner child who's freaked out. So, for example, when I went into East Germany, I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to end up in jail. They're never going to see me again, blah, blah, blah. All the things that mom shoved into my head. No, it was fine. We went through Checkpoint Charlie. We went in, we toured around, we saw things, we came back out, it was fine. But it was like all of that stuff that got shoved into my head that I had to get rid of. And I'm really glad I confronted it. I'm really glad that I was like, nope, I'm going to do this. I'm going to face my fear. I'm going to stare it down, and I'm going to wrestle it to the ground, and I'm going to win. So, and that's kind of what we have to do when we're doing that. It's good to have a therapist, though, to help us work through that and also guide us. It's like, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you, what's holding you back? What's the fear? Journal it out. Start doing things you love. And social interactions are going to be awkward. They are, because our abusive parent has made it awkward. They don't teach us how to socialize. They don't teach us how to say hi to somebody. They don't teach us how to, just be ourselves. So really a huge part of socialization or socializing is just being ourselves. It really is. And doing the things that we love. So I encourage you to do the things you love and get with a good trauma therapist, start working on self-esteem, and that is going to help you tremendously. Okay. Okay. It's a very similar question. How do I overcome isolation? I was raised isolated due to a narcissistic parent, and all relationships were sabotaged. Yes. And now I don't know how to trust or find people that I trust. Okay, this is common. So when we come out of an abusive relationship, we are not going to trust people. And I still have an issue with trust. You bet your bippy. I'm very suspicious of people. And that is a direct result of having had family that sabotaged. You bet. Because if you can't trust the people that bore you, who can you trust? You know what I'm saying? So it's really a matter of trusting your gut. It really is a matter of starting to trust your gut and listening to your gut. Every time I've gone against my gut, bad things have happened. But when I listen to my gut, I get steered in the right direction. So it's a matter of trusting yourself first and then trusting your gut to tell you whether this person is trustworthy or not, or whether this situation is trustworthy or not. So it's, again, get with a good trauma therapist, read the books I recommend, start practicing trusting your gut. So you start small. You start with things that you already know the answer to. So, for example, I hate peanut butter. Hate it. It's the consistency. I just, ugh. So if I ask my gut, hey gut, do you like peanut butter? It's, no, I don't. It's a real strong no. I can feel it in my body. But if I ask my gut, do you like Reese's peanut butter cups? Oh, yes. No story. No story, just a yes or a no. So you start practicing with things that you already know the answer to. Head and the heart tell stories. Gut is a simple yes or no answer to a yes or no question. So you start practicing, and you start listening to your gut, and you start playing with it, you know? And it does take time. It does take time. Are you ever 100% going to be able to trust, without thinking about it? No. Probably not. I mean, I've been working on this for years and I'm still very, hypervigilant. And it's because of the PTSD. It's because of my prior experience with abusive family, that taught me, you need to be on guard, So, but eventually we do start trusting our gut and we are able to make decisions that lead us into healthy friendships, healthy relationships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's practice and get with a good trauma therapist. Absolutely. Okay, next question. How is it that we can be affected by oxytocin and the isolation, but they don't seem to be, and how are they unable, and they don't seem to be, and how are they unable to just switch everything off how are they able to switch everything off with us emotionally? Don't they have oxytocin? Yes, but here's the thing. They are also probably antisocial personality disorder, which is psychopath. And remember, abusers, especially if they're accusing you of having an affair, are probably the ones having the affair. So what they do is they get their oxytocin outside. They do. And then they'll come back and accuse the target of abuse of the one that's cheating, when in fact, they're the ones that's cheating. So yeah, I mean, they're getting it somewhere. And they're allowed to touch their family. You know that whole what's good for the goose is good for the gander thing? Not with them. They're like, nope, I'm doing it, you don't. So I can touch my family. I can hug, They don't really love, though. So it doesn't really, the emotional part is not there. There is an empathy card, SIM card, missing. It's gone. It's not there. So they don't love the way we do. So yeah, do they have oxytocin? Yes. I don't know what percentage they have compared to people that actually are empathic and do have sympathy and empathy. I don't know. I would have to look into some studies about that. But my guess would be is they probably don't have a lot of the feel-good chemicals that we do. And they probably don't. And I'm just guessing. But I'm thinking also that they're getting it outside, especially the ones that are always accusing the partner of cheating. Because it's usually the abuser that's cheating when that's going on. So they're getting their oxytocin somewhere. And the other thing of it is, too, is like I said, it's okay for them to hug their family. It's okay for them to hang out with their friends, but don't you dare hang out with your friends. And don't you dare hang out with your family. And don't you dare touch them. And don't you dare, but they can do that. So yeah, they're psychopaths. So there's Something mentally, chemically wrong up here. Something's missing. So yeah. So, okay, I hope that answered the question. If not, just IM me on Facebook and I can see if I can find some studies. Ugh. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. What is the name of the book again to work on loneliness? I got rid of the friends, but I'm working on me and I want him to be alone. So what was the name of the book you would like? Thanks. Okay, well, so when you work on being alone, or when you're working through having left an abusive relationship, whether that is a familial abusive relationship or whether that is a romantic abusive relationship, you're going to want to work on self-esteem. So you're going to want to work on the Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. You need to get back into relationship with who you are. What are your wants? What are your needs? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? What do who you are? What do you like to eat? How are you eating? Are you eating healthfully or are you eating unhealthily? Are you sleeping well or are you not sleeping well? Taking care of yourself, getting back in touch with you. So the Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. There's also You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. You also want to work on boundaries. So The Disease to Please by Harriet Breaker. That's another great one. You want to start doing a deal breaker list. So what are things you will not put up with from anybody in any kind of relationship? That means a friendship, a romantic relationship, a familial relationship, a boss relationship, a coworker relationship. What are things that you will not put up with? And then have that cemented in your mind so that you don't put up with that kind of abuse or that kind of disrespect. Okay, so those are the books that I recommend. Absolutely. And get with a good trauma therapist. It would only help. Okay. Why do abusers win in court even when there is so much evidence against the narcissistic abuser to prove parental alienation? Oh, Lord have mercy. All right. So I talked about this a few weeks ago when I talked about public officials or dysfunctional people in public positions. Very much so. Abusers are attracted to positions of power. So you will find them as judges, you will find them as attorneys, you will find them as therapists, you will find them as police officers, you will find them as doctors, you'll find them as nurses, you'll find them in any position where they have potential power over someone. What I see in the family court system, and it makes me so angry, and Dwayne and I have had numerous conversations about this, Dwayne Robert from Dad's Surviving Divorce. There are so many judges out there that are narcissists themselves that they will side with the abuser because they recognize themselves in the abuser, despite the evidence of parental alienation, despite the evidence of breaking the court orders, despite the evidence, because they're connecting with the abuser. I think I mentioned this story where I went in to discuss Stockholm Syndrome, and I was just there as an expert witness on Stockholm Syndrome. I wasn't making an opinion. I wasn't, I was just educating the court on Stockholm Syndrome and what happens in abusive relationships. I was on the stand for about 3.5 hours because this guy was a narcissist and he didn't like what I was saying. And he was grilling me like, we'll prove it. And I kept pulling up study after study after study after study after he didn't like it. And I was like, am I going to get thrown in jail for contempt of court? Because he's just yelling at me for 3.5 hours. And I stood up, I kept, no, Your Honor, this is what happens. No, Your Honor, this is what happens. But again, I left the court and the attorney walked up to me and he was like, he's disordered, isn't he? And I'm like, you think? So yeah, there's a lot of them that are abusers themselves, are narcissists themselves. They side with the abuser because they recognize themselves in the abuser. And it's a screwed up system. Listen to me now, believe me later. If you think the justice system is just, you are smoking the ganja. Seriously, it's not. It is not. It is deeply, deeply flawed. And it is deeply flawed, especially in the family court system, because if you have a bunch of narcissists sitting as a judge, judging over this family system where there is domestic violence going on, the kids are not being heard. Oftentimes, the states won't even bother listening to a kid until the kid is like 16, 17, around in there. And you couple that with, okay, they'll listen to the kid, but what if the kid has been under the influence of the abuser? It needs to be overhauled. The whole freaking system needs to be overhauled. The family court systems are so broken. It's not even funny. Why does this happen? Because probably the judge is a narcissist themselves and they are identifying with the abuser. That's usually 9 times out of 10 what I see happening. There are good judges out there. I'm not, I'm not bagging on every single judge or every single nurse or every single doctor. Not everybody is that way, but the bad ones generally tend to be disordered. So the ones that abuse the position of power, they don't, this is, so I'm writing a book about what it's like to be a therapist. And one of the main things I say in there is how many disordered people are attracted to my position because they see it as an opportunity to have power over somebody. But what they're not seeing, what the judges are not seeing, what the bad judges, the bad doctors, the bad nurses, the bad, the disordered ones, what they're not seeing is that their decisions have got real world consequences, both for the people that they are making the decisions about and themselves should they finally get caught for being unethical. So they don't think about that. Narcissists are not introspective. They don't think about the big picture. They don't think about who they're impacting or how they're impacting. And furthermore, they don't care. So that's why I'm saying a lot of these judges that are doing these bad rulings, if you look at them, they're disordered themselves. So the system is deeply flawed. It needs to be revamped. There needs to be better oversight and better it's like social work or something involved in the family court system, because so many, almost 99.99999% of the high conflict divorces are because of disordered people. The ones that are, narcissistic or psychopathic or dark triad or whatever. So yeah, it definitely needs an overhaul, but that's why that's happening. Is it fair? No. Is it right? No. Does it need an overhaul? Hell yeah. How do we get that? We're going to have to start writing politicians. We're going to have to start writing our legislator. We're going to have to start making noise, because if we don't, it'll never change, and it needs to change. And Dwayne agrees with me on this. He's like, the system is just pathetically broken. So anyway, that's why. Even in cases where it's blatantly obvious what's happening, it's like, what the actual? So there that is. Okay. For the fearful avoidant, any questions we can ask ourselves to discern why we need to protect ourselves from feeling smothered by or intruded on, and how to stop the pattern. So again, with a fearful avoidant attachment, and this is often what borderlines have, okay? And again, borderline personality disorder rooted in trauma. Rooted in trauma. If you can get to that trauma, if you can get to what caused the avoidance, if you can get to what happened, why? What happened? When did you make that decision to push everybody away? Why were you fearful? What was happening? So how can you get to that? So you got to get with a good trauma therapist. Now, a good trauma therapist is not going to, suddenly make all the memories come flooding forward. You need to feel safe enough to do that. And this is what happens when you're in with a good therapist, is that after a certain amount of time, you'll start remembering things because you feel safe. And you're going to start journaling it. And you're going to start, okay, what did my inner child decide? Inner Child Workbook by Catherine Taylor. It can be very triggering, but it can be very helpful because it can kind of show you, whoa, this is when this happened, or this is why this happened, or this is the decision I came to when I was 4, or this was, that kind of thing. Again, self-esteem workbook, and CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Why? Because you've got to understand that if you were made to be fearful and scared that you're going to get hurt by loving someone, that's abuse and that's trauma. And you got to put all that back onto the person who taught that to you. So again, CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Excellent book. Highly recommend it. Okay, my loves, that is all the questions for today. So remember, there is not going to be a show this weekend because it is going to be the 4th of July. So I will be visiting my family up north in Chico. I'm very excited. I haven't seen them in a long time. So there is that. And then the next week, I want to talk about financial abuse. And I want to talk about how parents screw their kids. And I want to talk about how, domestic partners screw their partner. Bosses screw their workers, unethical ones. Oh, I've got some stories for you. So anyway, I want to talk about all that and what you can do about it. And geriatric. elderly being financially abused, and kids being financially abused. So we're going to talk about all of that good stuff. Oh Lord, it just the things people do just makes me go, what the actual? Anyway, so there that is. So that'll be the week after July 4th will be financial abuse. All right, guys, have a great week. Take good care of yourselves, and I will see you on, I think it's July 11th is the following Sunday. Don't quote me on that. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.